What's good? It's Woog. This is the return of arguably the greatest mixed martial artist of all time as he makes his heavyweight debut. We have Jon Jones, 26 wins, 1 loss, and 1 no contest, taking on Cyril Gane, 11 wins and 1 loss. This is the highly anticipated return of Jon Bones Jones, who has been inactive since his razor-thin disputed decision win and final title defense at light heavyweight against Dominic Reyes in February of 2020. So this has been a 3+ year layoff. And there has been a lot of controversy. There have been alleged violent incidents, domestic violent incidents that Jon Jones has been in. And, there's been a lot of question on, is Jon Jones going to return? What's he going to look like when he returns? Is he going to be a shell of his former self? Is he going to be able to recapture the dominance that he held over the light heavyweight division for several years? And he does have that one disqualification loss against Matt Hamill in a fight where he just brutally damaged Matt Hamill and was throwing basically 12 to 6 elbows, blooding up his entire face from the mount position. That's Jon Jones's only loss. So there might have been a couple stumbling blocks, and he was stripped of the title due to violating the UFC athlete code of conduct policy. And then he recaptured it against Ovince St. Preux, who captured the interim belt, and then he knocked out Daniel Cormier, which was then turned to a no contest because of Jon Jones's positive PED test. There have been stumbling blocks, but in terms of a fight by fight, performance by performance standpoint, in terms of what we've seen as the viewing audience, Jon Jones has been supreme over the division for several years. We have not really seen a misstep, even though his last 2 fights were very close against Thiago Santos in a fight where Santos basically tore ligaments in his knees and never fully recovered career-wise since, and that ended up being a split decision win for Jon Jones. And then, as I mentioned, against Dominic Reyes, where heading into the scorecard, it was anybody's guess who won that fight. But it feels like we are, not only the 3 years since Jon Jones is taken to the cage, but it seems like we're even a couple more years than that removed from Jon Jones looking like prime vintage and just the devastating and destructive Jon Jones. It feels like we're far removed from that. So now that he's going to be making his heavyweight debut against Cyril Gane, let's just ask ourselves some questions here. Jon Jones says in interviews that he now weighs 250 pounds. Well, my question is, how effective is that weight gain? I think there's an assumption that when you start putting on pounds, your strength is going to proportionately scale up. Your ability to take shots from bigger opponents is going to scale up while you maintain all of your quick and reflex-based attributes, not to mention your cardio. I feel like there are a lot of assumptions that are being made here. And let's not forget, Jon Jones is also 35 years old. So against Cyril Gane, he's going to be taking on a guy who was basically beating Francis Ngannou in the stand-up before Francis Ngannou scored some very critical takedowns, some key takedowns, and was able to keep Gane down in certain important moments of the fight to be able to retain his heavyweight championship. So nobody would have guessed that it would have taken Francis Ngannou to start grappling Cyril Gane to retain the title. That just wasn't the likely scenario to play out. And I think that it's that fight and those takedowns and keep downs that have people thinking Jon Jones is going to beat Cyril Gane here. But even if the slight edge public-wise is weighing towards Jon Jones, he's only a -140 favorite over Cyril Gane. Cyril Gane is going off at like a +115. So the betting odds are actually pretty damn close to even in this one. But let's look at the matchups here. Jon Jones was never the sharpest striker. Like, he didn't have the sharpest boxing skills, for instance. Yes, he did do well in the stand-up against Lyoto Machida and ended up hurting him there. He devastated Shogun Rua to capture the title. But if you look at like prime Jon Jones, what was he doing to dominate the division. It seemed like within the first 2 minutes of all Jon Jones fights, he would score like some sort of a tricky inside leg trip that would score the takedown, and then he would just have his way with his opponents on the mat, striking with devastating elbows and punches, and just, you know, if you wanted to go for a submission like the one that he pulled off against Ryan Bader, it was takedown and keep down predicated. Look at how he beat Vladimir Matyashenko, the janitor. Yes, Jon Jones would also, you know, have his moments of very good striking, and he would press his opponents up against the cage and just kind of threaten takedowns and then go for tricky spinning elbows. Look at what he was doing to Rampage Jackson in that fight. Well, when it comes to those takedowns, can he score the takedown and then keep Cyril Gane down? Cyril Gane weighing over 240 pounds himself. And Cyril Gane, I see as being a better mover in the stand-up than Jon Jones. Jon Jones has been a little bit more flat-footed, and he's employed what one half of Morning Combat duo Luke Thomas refers to as single strike high variance. Basically, Jon Jones has like 15 different strikes that he could pull out of his quiver, and he throws those one at a time. So he's not like a volume striker. He's a front kick, jab, maybe a tricky elbow, leg kick, oblique kick, and he's basically like a Swiss Army knife, throwing all of these different shots at you one at a time that kind of confuse the opponents and keep the opponent from being able to get out of first gear, and basically keeping them at the end of Jon Jones's long range. So a couple of things here. Cyril Gane is about 6'5". Jon Jones, again, was heavily using his height and reach to lord over the light heavyweights. So when he had a few inches over Shogun Rua, Lyoto Machida, Rashad Evans, Rampage Jackson, Anthony Smith, Thiago Santos, Daniel Cormier, you go down the list. But look at when Jon Jones was fighting, usually fighting somebody nearly his height. So we're talking Alexander Gustafsson and then Dominic Reyes. These guys are 6'4", or arguably a little bit taller. Some have Dom Reyes listed as 6'3". He looked about 6'4" when he was fighting Jon Jones. And Gustafsson, I believe, is about 6'5". And yes, he did mop up Gustafsson in the rematch, but look at that first fight against Gustafsson, and it was Gustafsson's boxing that was giving Jon Jones a hard time. And Jon Jones was looking to score takedowns there, but if he wasn't able to get the takedown, or more importantly, the keep down, where you could use up about 2 minutes out of the round, keeping the opponent down and draining their energy, trying to keep you and fight you off of them. If he ends up in the stand-up with Cyril Gane, because he can't keep Cyril Gane down, again, heavier, we're assuming that Jon Jones's strength has scaled up, but we got to see it to believe it. I've got to see the gas tank, the endurance and cardio in order to believe it. And you know, Cyril Gane, no, he doesn't have, you know, a lot of takedown defense. No, he's not a skilled technician when it comes to grappling. Again, Francis Ngannou took him down multiple times to secure, you know, the title retention. But Cyril Gane, being as big as he is, I'm sure is working on a ton of takedown defense and is preparing for that. So there's a reason why people who are wrestlers by trade stop wrestling so much in MMA once they get into their early to mid 30s. Look at Justin Gaethje. Even Daniel Cormier became a stand-up fighter. Rampage Jackson, Rashad Evans. I mean, there are several that you can name who end up being stand-up fighters instead of, hey, let's go for another takedown, then another takedown. Let's do chain wrestling and let's win the fight that way. It's because it's a dog-tiring sport. There's a reason why high school wrestling matches and college wrestling matches are only a few minutes long, basically, because minute for minute, you will be hard pressed to find a more exhausting sport. So Jon Jones at 35 years old, do you expect him to get the inside leg trip within a couple minutes and then aggressively advance position in the way that he was doing it in his early, mid, and late 20s? I'm sorry, I just don't see it, especially given the size of Cyril Gane and how much I think that type of physicality and that type of work is going to exhaust or at least tire a bigger Jon Bones Jones. So, I mean, even if a hippopotamus's fight IQ is a 6, he's still a hippopotamus. So I'm not so sure, not only on whether Jon Jones has the edge in the stand-up, I tend to believe that he does not. I believe that his threat of the takedown and having that play into Cyril Gane's mind is the only thing that might give Jon Jones an edge in the stand-up. But just standing up and letting that stand-up fight play out, I would go with Cyril Gane winning those rounds. If the round is going to be comprised mostly of stand-up, I'm going Cyril Gane to win that round. But I'm also not so sure that if Jon Jones starts going for takedowns, that he's going to be able to, one, score them, and then two, be able to keep Cyril Gane down. And if Cyril Gane's able to get up from one, is Jon Jones going to be able to get right back to the next takedown? I'm not so sure about these things. So, heading into this video, I was actually leaning Cyril Gane via decision. Like, I could just see a scenario where if Jon Jones isn't able to dictate where the fight takes place and basically score those takedowns and make this more of a wrestling match than a stand-up Muay Thai kickboxing affair, which I know Jon Jones has had success in those realms, he hasn't fought somebody like Cyril Gane before. I'm sorry, Cyril Gane's movement, his technical striking ability, it is unlike just about all of Jon Jones's opponents, especially when you also factor in the size, both height-wise and weight-wise. And yeah, Jon Jones does have a slight reach advantage. No, not even a slight reach advantage. It's like 84.5 inches to 81 inches. He's got the reach advantage. But again, Cyril Gane has the height advantage, and I think he's the more fluid mover and fluid striker. I don't think that he's just gonna be there dumbfounded and bewildered as Jon Jones does his oblique kick, one jab, this strike, that strike, and just stand out on the outside. Like, can you picture Jon Jones doing that to Cyril Gane? I can't. So I was really thinking Cyril Gane via decision going into this video. But the more I'm really thinking about it, and I had a conversation with my boy Jonathan Harper, and he was talking with his boy NFLer Mercedes Lewis, and I'm kind of going with some of the things that we were discussing this, Jonathan and I, and we were just kind of like talking the scenario out in a way through text. And Jon Jones's experience level is so profound, and he has found himself in so many different situations where I could see him fighting somewhat evenly, even if he's getting edged in the stand-up, to then find well-timed takedowns and then be able to do things to either stall time or to slightly advance, maybe not rain hell upon Cyril Gane from the ground and pound scenarios that Jon Jones used to be so accustomed to doing. I mean, that's what Jon Jones was doing to dominate the sport for so many years. That's where he was the most dominant. He developed into a more proficient striker, and then with his physical dimensions was able to lord that over his opponents. But he was a wrestler by trade, and it was those trips and takedowns and then those slicing elbows once he gets you down. That's what made Jon Jones what he is, really. And his long limbs, arms and legs, was able to put him into positions where he could be leaning over and basically wrapping his arms around that guy and be able to get his hands locked right around your bottom area to then be able to pull or to find a way to take you down. Usually people, when they have you, pressed up against a cage like that, their arms aren't long enough to also wrap you up like that. So Jon Jones was just a physical outlier, but I do think that his experience can win the day over Cyril Gane, where Jon Jones, maybe makes this a little bit of a boring fight. Like, I could see a relatively non-eventful and lesser action type of fight playing out between these two. Again, Jon Jones is 35 years old. Do not let that get lost on you. And he's had 3+ years out of the cage. I don't think this is going to be the best of Jon Jones. I don't think he's going to be as smooth as he normally is. I think he's going to have to dig super deep to pull this one off. But I think that he might have the cardio to do it and might have the situational awareness to be able to find the right times to go for takedowns and to make that the determining factor on who wins this one. The thing that even has me doubting that, though, is wouldn't you have done that against Dominic Reyes to solidify your win? And it's not like Dominic Reyes is a great wrestler and grappler himself. So it's like, if you knew that this was a tight and close fight and that it was anybody's guess going into the scorecards who was winning, you know, heading into the 4th round, heading into the 5th round, Jon Jones had to really battle back. But why didn't he score more takedowns if he still has the ability to do so? So if he wasn't doing that against Dominic Reyes at 205 and not doing it against Thiago Santos, who again had bad legs in the later rounds of that fight, how can we be so sure that he could do that against a 240 plus pound, damn near 250 pound Cyril Gane? I don't know, but I'm almost going against my own logic here because I have such high belief in Jon Jones's ability to pull it off. And I believe in his heart. I believe in the dog in him. And I'm not as convinced that Cyril Gane has the dog in him and can dig as deep and get as gritty and as ugly and do what he has to do to pull off a very, very difficult win. Like, Cyril Gane does have some impressive wins, like his stoppages over Junior Dos Santos and wins over Volkov and Rosenstruck, and then, you know, his stoppage over Derek Lewis before the loss to Ngannou, and then his knockout over Tai Tuivasa, all super impressive. Jon Jones is another animal, and look, I'm not convinced that Jon Jones's attributes translate to heavyweight. Yes, in interviews, he's convinced that it is the case, but it's not until we see the rubber hit the road that we see that it is true or not true. We have to see this play out. But as it stands, I'm still gonna go with Jon Jones to edge, like a close decision. I don't know if it's gonna be like a split decision, but it might be a close, unanimous, like 3 rounds to 2 style of win for Jon Jones. And I do think it's going to involve some takedowns. But again, I don't think that Jon Jones is going to come out here and best Cyril Gane in the stand-up. I think that if Jon Jones plans on making this majority stand-up affair, he might find that he is just losing minute after minute against the more technically proficient, the harder striker. Jon Jones also isn't like a knockout puncher. Yes, he did hit DC with that head kick, but he throws kind of long looping punches, and again, it's just one at a time. He's never been like an Anthony Johnson, hey, I hit you, you hit the canvas type of puncher. That's never been his MO. So I don't even think he's got the striking strength or the power advantage over Cyril Gane. Again, we'll see if his physicality scales up with the weight that he's put on. We just don't know. We simply don't know. And again, Jon Jones is saying he weighs 250 pounds. We'll see how those attributes scale up. But again, I'm going with the experience, the ultra experience. In my view, greatest mixed martial artist of all time. I've got him at number 1, Anderson Silva number 2, George St. Pierre at number 3. You could argue at 4 or 5. Yeah, I mean, Jose Aldo, Fedor Emelianenko. That's another conversation for another day. I know some put Khabib. I look at him as retiring way too early to be in that upper echelon. Like, his reign of dominance once securing the belt for me wasn't long enough. But yeah, that's another conversation for another day. I'm gonna go with the proverbial GOAT here, Jon Jones, returning to the cage after 3+ years and winning in his heavyweight debut against Cyril Gane, who basically came this close to becoming heavyweight champion. Let me know who you think is taking this one and how. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.